Coming up on Mountain News at 5:30, after 3 U.S. troops were killed by a drone attack in Jordan last Sunday, the United States military has retaliated. And the Michigan mother whose son murdered 4 other students was on the stand today as she faced cross-examination from prosecutors.
Plus, a fantastic weekend of weather is on the way. Your first alert forecast coming up as Mountain News at 5:30 starts now.
Dedicated to southern and eastern Kentucky, this is WYMT Mountain News at 5:30.
Good evening, I'm Steve Hensley. The United States has begun retaliatory airstrikes on Iranian-backed targets in Iraq and Syria in response to a drone strike that killed 3 U.S. service members on Sunday. CBS's Willie James Inman reports from Washington.
CBS News has confirmed that the U.S. on Friday launched retaliatory strikes on Iranian-supported targets in Iraq and Syria. President Biden ordered the strikes involving U.S. B-1 bombers. The wave of airstrikes on about a half a dozen locations comes days after a drone attack killed 3 American troops at an outpost in Jordan. Earlier, the remains of 3 American service members returned to American soil, with President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden joining the families of the fallen soldiers for the solemn event. On Thursday, the president paid tribute to the fallen troops.
They risked it all, and we'll never forget the sacrifices and service to our country, that the dozens of service members who were wounded and are recovering now.
Sergeants William Rivers, Kennedy Sanders, and Breonna Moffett were killed in the drone strike that the U.S. blamed on an Iran-backed group. More than 40 other U.S. troops were wounded. The remains of the soldiers go from Dover Air Force Base to their final resting places. Willie James Inman, CBS News, Washington.
And the Pentagon just announced that Sergeant Rivers has also received a posthumous promotion to Staff Sergeant in recognition of his exceptional courage, dedication, and leadership. And there will be much more on these retaliatory airstrikes that have happened just in the last little bit tonight at 6:30 on the CBS Evening News.
We are tracking some clearing conditions on this Friday evening. Here's a live look from our camera from Perry County at Buffalo Mountain. A beautiful sunset back in the distance. That current temperature is sitting at 52 degrees over at Buffalo Mountain, up to 57 for Manchester, 55 in Harlan, also London, 50 for Jackson. A little bit cooler in the Big Sandy Valley, up to 46 in Pikeville and 47 over in Clintwood, Virginia at this hour. Up on first alert pinpoint Doppler, we are dry, and notice as we zoom out, we are tracking a cold front, and that will continue to slowly push off to the south as we go into this evening. Now behind this system, we are tracking some more cooler conditions as we go into tonight, but also some more drier air. If you have plans to fire up the grill, we stay dry under a clearing sky. Those temperatures also chilly in the middle to lower 40s. We wake up in the upper 20s and lower 30s to start the weekend, but some fantastic weather is on the way tomorrow. We stay dry under plenty of blue sky and sunshine. Those temperatures also warmer. We top out in the middle to upper 50s. More mild weather on the way for Sunday and beyond. Those details coming up in just a little bit. Steve?
Cameron, thank you. The judge in former President Trump's federal election interference case has officially put the proceedings on hold. The case, which was scheduled to start early next month, is officially postponed now. That's according to a new court order. Federal Judge Tanya Chutkan says a new trial date will be set if and when a mandate is returned from the Court of Appeals. The D.C. Circuit is considering whether or not the former president has immunity from the case. The House Judiciary Committee has subpoenaed Fulton County, Georgia District Attorney Fani Willis for documents related to the spending of federal funds. Republicans in Congress have long sought to undermine the credibility of Willis's election subversion case against Donald Trump and several others. The claims were raised by a defendant in a court filing seeking Willis's dismissal and for the case to be tossed. If the 2024 presidential election was held today between Donald Trump and President Joe Biden, Trump would have a narrow lead. That's according to a new CNN poll. The poll found that 49% of registered voters would back Trump and 45% would back President Biden. 5% of voters say they would vote for someone else. These numbers are identical to CNN polling from the fall. Now, if the election were between President Biden and Nikki Haley, Haley would have the clear advantage. A jury in Michigan is considering whether a mother is guilty of 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter for her son's murders at his high school. Jennifer Crumbly and her husband James are the first parents in the United States to be charged in a school shooting. CBS's Michael George reports.
It takes the unthinkable, and she has done the unthinkable.
In closing arguments, prosecutors ticked through the testimony of every witness, hoping to connect Jennifer Crumbly to the 2021 school shooting her son carried out.
This is the last picture that we have of that gun until we see it murder 4 kids on November 30th. And the person holding it is Jennifer Crumbly.
Crumbly's defense attorney reminded jurors of the high burden of proof.
If you have just one reasonable doubt about the case, you must vote not guilty.
And she challenged the charges against the parent of a school shooter, unprecedented in the U.S.
The prosecutor has cherry-picked little bits of evidence out of mountains of evidence. No one expected this. No one could have expected this, including Mrs. Crumbly.
Earlier in the day, Crumbly faced cross-examination from prosecutors, questioning her claim she was a helicopter mom. They reminded the jury of her weekend job, her horses, and an affair that pulled her away from parenting in the days leading up to the shooting. Prosecutors also challenged her insistence that her husband, James Crumbly, was in charge of gun safety.
You didn't trust him to get out of bed on time.
Correct.
You didn't trust him to cut the grass. But this is the person you entrusted with a deadly weapon.
I did.
On the stand Thursday, Crumbly denied knowing her son had mental health struggles. Michael George, CBS News.
Ethan Crumbly pleaded guilty to the school shooting and is serving a life prison sentence. His father, James Crumbly, goes on trial next month. The head of the Federal Aviation Administration will be in the hot seat on Capitol Hill next week. Administrator Mike Whitaker will be testifying in a public hearing before the House Aviation Subcommittee on Tuesday. This marks his first appearance since a door plug blew out of an Alaska Airlines Boeing 737 MAX 9 in mid-flight. The incident resulted in that type of aircraft being grounded for nearly 3 weeks. For the first time, an advertising company has settled an opioid lawsuit. Publicis, a company that worked on Purdue Pharma's OxyContin account, was accused of falsely marketing opioids as safe. The agreement settlement of $350 million must be paid within the next 2 months. In addition, the French marketing company will not take on any more opioid clients. Connecticut is set to become the first state to cancel medical debt for many of its residents. The state will wipe out about $650 million in medical debt for an estimated 250,000 residents this year. The governor said this will provide financial breathing room for many people in a state with a large wealth gap. Residents whose medical debt equals 5% or more of their annual income are eligible. Coming up on Mountain News at 5:30, we find out if a glove that's designed to keep you from getting burned when grabbing food out of the oven does what it's intended to do.
Plus, we stay above average through this weekend. Those details coming up after this break.